What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another video. Today we're taking a look at Dragon's Dogma 2 on my RTX 3080 Ti paired with the Ryzen 5900X, and we're going to mostly focus on 1440p, but we're also going to take a look at some 4K and DLSS. Now there's some strange behaviors here, but just a spoiler, the 3080 Ti actually runs the game really good. As you will get to see, you can get a very playable 60 FPS and the game does look gorgeous. Now I do want to address this image quality setting because it is a topic of debate in the community. Some people seem to think that it's all the way to the right, that it's 100% resolution scale. Personally, and most people seem to think that it's in the middle. And this type of image quality setting is in all other RE Engine games as well. So, and they all go beyond 100%, but for some reason here they didn't label it. But we're going to leave it in the middle and jump into the game at 1440p with all the settings maxed out. And let's see how we do. We're going to begin right outside the Batal border town of Checkpoint Rest Town, I think it's called. And what I wanted to look here is DLSS, because they said that they improved the quality of DLSS, and right now we're at 1440p native. We're getting really good FPS, 75 FPS. Our GPU seems to be mostly fully utilized at 98%. What we're going to do is going to turn DLSS on and take a look at the image quality. Mostly because Capcom patched the game March 29th, and in the notes it said they fixed the DLSS image quality issues, but to me it still looks a bit blurry, guys. What do you think? Leave your comments below. Let me know if you notice any improvements, but this is what the game looks like with DLSS set to quality. And this is DLSS off, image quality slider in the middle. It looks nice and sharp. There's DLSS quality again, zoomed in at 2 times. And as you can see, the grass does look a bit blurrier, doesn't it? And this is with DLSS off. I don't know, I kind of like DLSS off better. But anyway, we're going to make our way down this hill here, and I want to go into this cave because I want to show you something that I came across that was kind of odd. Well, I mean, I have known for a while now that when you enter some of the cave areas or darker areas that are indoors, the game becomes more demanding, like the performance will drop. For example, we went from 70 to 60 FPS here, and we're dropping even lower to the mid 50s. Now, another thing that makes FPS drop even lower, guys, is turning on your lantern. I just noticed this now. So we're getting around 58 FPS right now. We turned the lantern on and we went to 48 FPS. That's a 10 FPS drop just for turning your lantern on. And now we're turning off again. We go back up to 58, 59. That's almost like a 20% of your performance drop in for turning the lantern on. Very, very weird. Now you might be thinking that, well, it could be ray tracing that's causing this, right? And I kind of thought the same thing. So what I did was I turned ray tracing off and did the same test. So if we turn our lantern off, we get 60 FPS, right? And then we were dropping 10 FPS by turning the lantern on. So what we're going to do here, we're going to turn ray tracing off and run the same test. Now to turn ray tracing off, you have to exit the game and go back to the main menu, which is what we did. So with ray tracing off, we get around 68 FPS, 70 FPS. So we do gain about 15% more performance by turning ray tracing off. That is normal. I actually have done the same test. But we still drop from 70 or 68 FPS, we dropped to 58. So we still dropped 10 FPS lower by turning on our lantern inside this cave. Actually, it'll do the same thing if you turn your lantern on in the daytime as well, right? So that is kind of strange. But we're going to leave ray tracing off for now and continue on to our journey. And we seem to be getting some pretty good performance out here in the daytime, 80 FPS. Our frame time graph looks really, really good. It's kind of what you want to see. Now don't pay much attention to the 1% lows or even the averages because I didn't end up resetting the recording of the metrics just because I was going in and out of menus. But just look at the frame time. You can see that it's running pretty well. It's very nice and smooth. Even in combat, no problem. For me personally, I do like the ray trace global illumination in this game. I think it adds to the immersion factor for me. And with the 3080 Ti, you're getting that 60 to 70 FPS anyway at 1440p native. So I would personally keep it on. But if you turn it off, you gain an extra 15 to 20% more performance just by turning it off. So I can completely understand that. And look at this, we're at around 80 to 90 FPS. But what I want to do is I want to go back to town and check out the nighttime, because nighttime can be more demanding than daytime. I know it doesn't really make a ton of sense, but it's true. So we've made it back to our border town here, the checkpoint rest town, I think it's called. And what we're going to do is we're going to pass the time. As you can see here too, we're actually CPU bound because these towns can be heavy on the CPU. But let's pass the time and see what type of numbers we get. And we seem to have dropped into the high 40s, guys. GPU is almost pegged at 98%. So the game has definitely become more demanding. Like I said it would, because some of these darker areas can be that. So we're getting 58 FPS, 56. And let's turn our lantern on. So we go from 52 to 49. So it's not so bad now, right? Maybe it's the whatever they're using for lighting is causing, you know, nighttime to be more demanding, or same thing with the caves. But I wanted to try turning DLSS on here because things get kind of weird. Just pay close attention, right? We were getting pretty bad FPS. We're getting like 50 FPS. So we turned DLSS on and look at that. We went all the way up to 90 FPS. We were not seeing this type of performance increase during the daytime. If you remember when I was comparing DLSS quality and DLSS off, we were gaining around 10 FPS or so. And right now we seem to be at 100 FPS. That is very, very unusual. Almost at 100 FPS. Well, 75, 80 from 50. That is a massive increase, guys. So what I wanted to do here is I turned DLSS back off, right? And we still have ray tracing off, by the way. And even turning DLSS back off, it maintained this high FPS. Really strange. But I looked into this further, and pay close attention. We have DLSS enabled on the left and DLSS off on the right. We're getting the same FPS pretty much, right? But if you pay close attention to the GPU utilization on the DLSS side, on the left, we're in the 70s and 80s of percent. So DLSS would be able to give us even more FPS, but we seem to be CPU bound because this game is very CPU heavy. So that is why the FPS is practically the same. If you look at the DLSS off, we're pretty much at 99% GPU utilization. So it just so happened to be that the numbers match. But this game is not very consistent. Some areas can be more demanding than others. So it's kind of what makes it kind of interesting to take a look at. For me, anyway. But I ended up continuing on with my quest. We basically had to save a little boy who had been kidnapped by wolves. His grandfather asked us to save him, so we have to follow these glowing flowers. And yeah, the performance was great, guys. And if you look, actually, we still hit some CPU limitations even with DLSS off. We're at 94% GPU utilization. So what I wanted to test here actually was I wanted to raise that image quality slider all the way to the max and see what kind of numbers we get. So let's do that. We were at around 80, 85 FPS. Let's go ahead and raise the image quality slider to the max. And we are getting these VRAM warnings, right? And I'm going to talk about that a little bit later. But firstly, even with the image quality all the way to the max, we seem to be hovering at around 60 FPS from around 80 that we were getting. And yeah, it looks pretty good. What I wanted to try also is 4K though, because clearly 1440p seems to be fine for the 3080 Ti. I do have some concerns for 3080 10GB cards, just because it's kind of weird in this game, and I'll show you in a second. But let's go ahead and check out 4K. Okay, so I just reloaded the game and we're at 38 FPS. But let's look at the settings. So I've set the game to 4K, and pay close attention to the VRAM metric on the right. See how it's red? It says 10 GB. Now we have 12 gigabytes on the 3080 Ti, but I think it allocates some of it to operating system, I think. But sometimes in the very beginning, it showed that we had 11 gigabytes. Now it says 10.4, so I'm not really sure what that is all about. But even with 10 gigabytes being on the red, technically, and clearly if you look at the VRAM metrics on the screen, we're at almost 12 gigabytes of allocation. Now mind you, we are at 4K with the image quality slider all the way to the right, which should be higher than native resolution. So that's kind of to be expected. And as I lower it down, it drops below. So if you have a 3080 10 gigabyte, you might have to notch down that image quality slider to not run into any VRAM issues. But look at that. At 4K with the image quality slider in the middle, we are getting that 66 FPS again, which is really good actually. And our GPU is mostly maxed out. We're at 97%, 98%. I would consider that maxed out for the most part, because this game needs optimization work, right? So we're going to continue the rest of this mission at 4K, and we seem to be doing quite well, although we are hitting some below 60 FPS areas, as is to be expected in this game. So I would say that 4K, you're not going to get a consistent 60 FPS experience with the 3080 Ti. And as a matter of fact, you might not even get a consistent 60 FPS experience even at 1440p in some areas, because I have seen some areas that can drop down. And there is a possibility that there could even be a VRAM leak or allocation issue with this game, because I don't know why it's telling me when I first launched the game that I have 11 gigs of VRAM available, and then now it says I only have 10 gigs. So I'm not sure how that works or how much of a role that plays, but I can tell you that as someone that has seen how games run when they run out of VRAM, I mean, I don't really see it here. I'm not seeing terrible frame times. I mean, it's pretty smooth for the most part if you look at the frame time. But we did end up finding the little boy, at least, to save him from the pack of wolves that kidnapped him. So what we're going to do is going to bring him back to his grandfather and probably wrap up this video.
How did you know where I was?
We finally made it back to town, and we're going to deliver the little boy back to his grandfather so that he can be relieved. And then we're going to fast forward the time so that we can check out daytime and see what type of frame rate we get with the game at 4K, because we already looked at 1440p and we was getting around 70 or so FPS outside of the city, because the city is CPU bound, so you can't really go by that. Anyway, finally it's daytime. Let's run outside the city. We are getting actually pretty good numbers here. 60, very close to 60 FPS, and I would say consistently so. 98% GPU utilization. And I have to say, guys, because I'm playing this on my 4K C1 TV, it looks drop dead gorgeous at 4K. And before I go, I also want to take a look at DLSS quality real quick as well, because at 4K actually DLSS looks quite a bit better than at 1440p. Now this isn't a surprise to anyone, because the nature of how DLSS works, of course it's going to look a bit better when you are running it from a higher resolution target, right? But this is just a quick look, and we're getting 60 FPS at 4K with the image quality in the middle, which in my opinion, that is native. It looks native to me. But anyway, let's go ahead and turn DLSS to quality while we're at 4K. And we have actually kept ray tracing off this whole time, except for the very beginning. I think it's fine. The game still looks really, really good. And we went from 60 FPS, 55 to 60 to 82. So that is very good, guys. And like I said, DLSS actually looks really good at 4K. It doesn't look nearly as blurry as it does at 1440p. But then again, that's not really a surprise. What is a surprise that the DLSS implementation in this game still needs a bit of work, because it still looks a bit blurry in lower resolution. I'm going to go ahead and cross the border to Batal, and I'm actually very excited to enter this new area. I've been really enjoying Dragon's Dogma 2, guys. It's kind of taken me away from making more videos, but I've really been immersed into this game, and I love exploring every nook and cranny of it. But we're still at DLSS quality here, getting around 70 to 80 FPS. So I think we're good to try some ray tracing before I go. and that's what we're gonna do. Let's go ahead, log out, and turn ray tracing on. There we go, ray tracing is on. Save our changes and load back into our game. And I'm actually curious because I think we should be able to maintain a close to 60 FPS. So this is 4K with DLSS set to quality, ray tracing on, and every other setting maxed out. So 3080 Ti can actually do it 4K, DLSS quality, and ray tracing. Now, of course, I can't test every single area, and there are going to be areas where you're not going to be able to maintain a consistent 60, I'm sure, because I've encountered some of those myself, and I've even run across some weird behavior sometimes where the game will run at lower FPS sometimes till you reset it. So I don't know what that's about, but clearly enabling ray trace global illumination here, the game looks gorgeous. I just think it makes the lighting so much better. So I don't know, let me know what you guys think down below. I had fun taking a look at this game on my 3080 Ti, and I actually haven't made a lot of 3080 Ti videos for some time, so I do apologize for that. I know some of you have subscribed because of the 3080 Ti videos I've made in the past, but this one was for you. And I also am going to check out Horizon Forbidden West on the 3080 Ti as well. But yeah, the game looks and runs pretty good. 4K or 1440p, you can make it happen. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this, and if you did, give it a like and consider subscribing. If you want to see more content like this, leave your suggestions down below, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.